November 6, 2023, City of Rollingwood Utility Commission meeting. We'll begin with a roll call, starting on my left.
Chris Kirksey.
Clark Wilson.
Jonathan Miller.
Walter Rollison.
Elizabeth Gray.
Christopher Meekin.
All right, moving on to public comments. Do we have any?
Sorry, that was assignment.
You're good.
You put your email and your cell phone number on there too? All right, moving on to the consent agenda. First item is discussion and possible action on the minutes from the September 18th, 2023 Utility Commission meeting, which are in the packet. Anyone want to make a motion to accept?
I'll move to accept the minutes.
Second.
We have a motion. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All abstaining? The ayes have it. Moving on to the regular agenda. Discussion regarding the 2022 City of Rollingwood Water Quality Report.
That's me.
That is
I'm a
you.
citizen. I'm Andrew Hunt with Crossroads, here to present your water quality report for the last year. I think you all have it on your devices there, but your CCR, your water quality report, is required to be sent out to your customers. That lists all of your contaminants that are in the water system, the source of your water, and any issues that need to be addressed to your residents. So I will go over kind of at a high level what this report includes, just to be cognizant of your time, and you can feel free to stop me if there's a parameter on there that concerns you, and I'll do my best to try to dive into the details of that. But essentially, a lot of this is state mandated language, like on page 1, lists out what's possibly could be for folks who have cancer or types of immune systems that could result in issues. We have to identify that you do have contaminants in the water. Every water system does in the state. There's an important statement on page 1 in the top right that all of your water meets or exceeds all state and federal standards. That's a very important statement, and while people will read the things in here, that's a very important statement. So you're good. Your water meets or exceeds, in many cases, the state and federal standards. As you know, you purchase water from Austin, so they treat your water, they distribute it to you, and you buy it and then sell it. So you don't retreat it. So whatever they are sampling, as well as what we sample, gets summarized in this report. Page 2 is just a list of definitions. Let me know if you have any questions on that. And then we get into the contaminants. So I will, unless you would like me to, I won't go through each of these line by line. Generally, inorganics are the scary looking ones, but a lot of those are in parts per billion. It's an important thing to note. And these are naturally occurring in many cases in the source water, which is where we're drawing the water the city is, rather from the lake and then selling to you. Nothing is really of concern as I look at that. You will notice on the left it says COA under 2022. That's just to identify that those were samples that the city took and not that we took. So we're required to report what they actually record as well. Organic contaminants, naturally, really herbicide runoffs, very common in the water system. Atrazine is another one you typically see, so no big concern there. Chloramines is the big one. That's the type of treatment, disinfection. Looks great. Minimum, maximum levels. Your average level is 2.37. That's fantastic. So adequately treated. That's an important thing. Your next group there on page 3, the disinfection byproducts are what we watch for. Those are the cancer-causing agents over time, a long period of time. Those levels are well below the state maximums of 80, so there's no cause of concern there. But the TTHMs and HA5s are concerning if you're getting to or exceeding those MCL levels. Final page on lead and copper. Turbidity looks concerning, but if you remember in 2022, the city of Austin had to shut down their plant and issue a boil water notice. So that NTU level of 9 well exceeds the state maximum of 0.3, but that's how dirty that water was at the plant. So It's good that they shut the plant down, issued a boil water notice. Anything over 0.3 NTUs is an immediate cause for a boil water notice. That's NTUs is the cloudiness of the water, so that's an indicator that you have potentially bacteria that's entering the water system. Underneath there is a very important thing, total and fecal coliform. Total coliform is obviously bacteria in the water. It's a general indicator for how dirty the water is and whether bacteria is present. We had, on all the samples we did, we had no issues, no positive samples, as well as fecal coliform. That's the really scary one, E. coli. So all good there. That's an important one. Then finally, we have secondary, which are typically unregulated contaminants, but are important for people with that want to set up their water softener or have more taste and odor related concerns. That's typically where we record those. But again, all of those are within your state and federal standards. The last page is a public notice that we are required to send out due to a filing error that we made on your behalf. So every quarter, we're required to send the summary of our chlorine sampling every quarter. And it's through the website the TCQ sets up. You have to fill it out, hit submit. For some reason, it didn't go through. Jury's still out on that, but TCQ says we don't have record of it, you never sent it. So the requirement is we have to notify your public that we didn't submit that report. It's important to note that we took all the samples that quarter, it just didn't hit their database. So we've changed some things internally to have a check and balance to make sure that that doesn't occur again. But that's the point of that notice. You're not, there's no fines or anything like that. This is just the only requirement that we have to meet. That happened in 2022. So this is sent out every year. It's sent out by July 1st. It's already been sent out. We'll have another one next year for 2023's full samples. Any questions? So you'll notice things like PFOAs are not on here. That's obviously a heavy topic people are discussing, the forever chemicals that may become regulated in the near future by the EPA, and you'll have to begin sampling for those. But yeah, happy to answer any questions if you have any.
You're all looking at me because I had all the questions last year.
Yeah, absolutely.
I do have some questions.
Okay.
So after we looked at the water quality report last year, we took some actions in that we increased the number of testing sites within Rollingwood
Okay.
and dispersed them more broadly across the community.
Okay.
Is there learning?
Well, I can go back. I don't have that here today, but I can see if that has made a difference. I think there was a question about nitrates was one of those, right? If I remember. And
Yeah.
Was that last year or 2 years ago? I'm trying to rack my
I believe
memory.
it was last year.
Was it last year? Yeah. Nitrates, I think, was a concern that y'all had. So that's
I have some questions about those too.
yeah. So that's the we do NAP sampling for that and do a series of 3 samples, which is probably what we've increased. I'll verify
Yeah,
that.
I'd be interested to see what comes from our samples rather than just the city
Yes, I'm
water
happy to
report
summarize that.
and what that
Mm-hmm.
difference may be based on our new sampling.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
my next question to that
Sure.
is we're going to be going through some water system upgrades.
Okay. Yep.
And if we would be changing two questions on that, would we be changing the sites of our water sampling that we're doing now, or would we keep them for consistency? And or would be interested in what the learnings are if we keep them there,
Mhm.
post the comparison from not just last year, this year, but then next year, for, how those the water samples may have changed with our infrastructure improvements.
Great point. So, and I'm now recalling that conversation. So I think it would be good to reanalyze once you have those improvements in place, even if it's by, portions of the neighborhood to make sure that we're able to compare those. Nitrates are an indicator of water that is not turning over properly and is burning through chlorine, which creates biofilm within the system, which then can lead a lot of other issues, and you can, typically, then you can actually start seeing total coliform, positive results, because the water is not turning over fast enough within the system. It's not looped, and I think that was originally our concern, is the furthest reaches of Rolling Wood, we were seeing higher nitrate levels than areas in the middle or towards the entry point. So with the new lines and with it being reevaluated, I think it'd be good to do both.
Yeah, and also there were some concerns on some other areas that we were using the city levels as reporting rather than comparing them to what it was once it had come through our system.
Right, okay.
So I'd be interested to have a comparison of our water samples versus
Yeah.
this report.
I'm happy to compile that and get that to you.
Thank you. And then a couple of individual questions. When we look at cyanide, I've compared the MCL and MCLG with EPA guidelines, and they match on the standard here versus EPA, except
Right.
it's, on the EPA guidelines, it's 0.2, and this is 200, so I assume that's just how we put our decimals?
Could be how it's being, which factor, they could be parts per million versus parts per billion. There's several factors. I can
Mhm.
double check that. It may be
Okay.
how they're recording their factors.
That would be great, because we've gone from, 110 is our maximum level last year to 170 this year.
It's gone
which is-
up.
Which is
Yep.
approaching that 200.
Yeah, and so that one too, I just went back and double checked the city of Austin's CCR that they sent out, which I'm sure they got questions on, and they have the exact same levels. So,
Right, so that's why, again, why I'd be interested in our own sampling as it comes through our system
yeah,
and how that does or does not match, because I
yeah, and it's
also don't, not only is it our local sampling, but also there have been questions on some of the city's reporting numbers, so.
and that's a great point, because we don't get the specifics of where the samples are taken within the city. And if you know the city of Austin, it's massive. They have multiple plants. Some of those samples could be in a portion of the city that really has no relation to the water that you get, likely from Ulrich, that is not the same, essentially. And
So
that might be
just like it
important.
could be higher, it could be dramatically lower for us, and that would
Sure.
be nice to know.
Okay. Mhm.
On the nitrates, the city's reported numbers go from 0.09 to 0.16, which is, close to a doubling thereof. But what was curious to me on our report here is that in the 2021 report, we have all three of the nitrate measurements from 2021. But in this year's report, we have the first overall nitrate from 2022, but then we have 2015 numbers? Is there a reason why we went backwards?
Yeah, let me double check that. That's a great point. Nitrates are typically what we measure on the quarterly regular basis. I'll fact check to see if the other types are in more infrequent samples.
But right, and they
Yeah.
might be, but it also doesn't make sense why in 2021, they reported the nitrites, both of them, with 2021 numbers. And
Okay,
in 2022, they've reported 2015 numbers.
I will make a note.
That
could be a
doesn't seem to make
typo.
sense.
Yeah. Sure. Okay.
I only have a couple more. In the contaminant, the diquat, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly, seems to have gone from last year's below maximum level, below 0.4, to now 0.6.
Mm-hmm.
Don't know if that's of concern. It doesn't seem to be near the maximum level, but I
Right.
was just looking for things that were jumps.
Yep.
And that's why it'd be interesting to see what our local number is, because maybe
Okay.
it's quite a lot more or less. And then we know that we have some aged pipes, and one of the things that we were worried about last year was, you called out copper, but also lead. I've looked through all the water reports, and that number seems to be 0 and unchanged. Love to see what our local is, because, again, we have
Yeah,
a
and
different
so
infrastructure.
I believe as of 2022, we did the official 3-year sampling cycle. So those numbers are going to be very accurate. Now we just take what's called the 90th percentile,
Uh-huh.
but I'm happy to send you. Are you familiar with the DWW website, the TCQ's drinking
not.
water? Okay, that's you're gonna have fun with that.
Okay.
TCQ DWW, you can Google it. Drinking Water Watch is the TCQ's repository for all of the samples that they receive from us, that they do internally. It's a great place to go if you want to look at trends, because they have history there. Looks like a website from the mid-90s, because it probably is, but it's legit, and that's typically what we'll do if somebody says, I'm noticing TTHMs are going up on we'll go back and historically look on the TCQs. It's a fully open, there's no login needed, and it's intended to try to, for transparency, to show all the results. So if you have to search the public water system name, City of Rollingwood, and then I think I'll send you all an email on how to navigate it. It might be, it's like hyperlinks, and it's pretty rough, but it's great. Once you figure it out, and you can see all the parameters that we've ever sampled, even historically, your operator, even your previous operator, as well as any state contractor. So the Department of Health reports to that as well, because they come and they do asbestos sampling. It's all there. You can list other chemicals, and it lists all the stuff that has been tested.
Great, thank you for that.
Yeah.
And then, my last was just, again, it's a not regulated, which you touched upon, but, and I think this is really only to do with, water softeners, but, needs potentially, but it does maybe tie in with some of our infrastructure things, and it'd be interesting to see where the samples correlate, because we've tripled our bicarbonate in a year.
Yeah, it's still low in my opinion, though. Generally speaking, when you compare that as well as to total hardness of CaCO3 is the industry standard that's utilized for hardness, for like scaling of your water system. If you notice the white streaks in your shower, that calcium buildup, they typically look at total hardness of CaCO3 over bicarbonate, and you're under 100. Most of our like Williamson County kind of hard water areas are in the 200s,
Okay.
and that's noticeable. That's still, I think, officially on this scale, it's hard water officially, but you're on the lower end of that hard water scale.
Just anecdotally, I have a whole house filter, and it wasn't, it was quite new, and it just completely went rock solid, and they came out and said, we've never had to do this quickly.
Wow, interesting.
So it
Yeah.
just made me wonder.
That's a simple test we can do too. That's a simple test we can send in and get you a localized total hardness. Again, that's just stuff that's not normally part of our sampling program. We're happy to get the lab to come do
I'm not
it.
saying the city, I should create extra costs or anything for the city. These are questions.
And then what you would do is most people don't, you take that average level and you divide it by 17.1, and that's your grains per gallon. That's your optimum setting for any softener. 17.1 divided by the average CaCO3.
Okay.
Now some of these companies will say, oh, you need 20 grains per, it's like, it's better to err on the lower side and work up to a higher level than to overfeed, because then you create your water, it's more aggressive, and you start eating away at your own copper pipes and causing pitting, and anyway, so that's just
Also helpful, thank you.
Yeah. But yeah, the big one I think on the horizon is PFOAs. So if that's something, I'm happy to send some information on that, on what the EPA is gonna be bringing down. Potentially, there's 6 PFOAs that they're looking at regulating, the forever chemicals that probably are already in everybody's body, but that's the stuff from all the Teflon and, you know, all the stuff on your skillet that you're eating anyway. But they are going through UMC 5 sampling. The city of Austin has already gone through theirs. They found non-detect on all 6. All of the water systems that qualify that we take care of also have non-detects. So I talked to LCRA Labs the other day, and they are just not seeing really problems with PFOAs in this area. So that is a good thing. But that'll be the next thing that will come down through the EPA that they'll regulate. And you'll have an MCL, and it'll become a part of your regular sampling program. So, other questions or?
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Just for my water boils, I mean, if people go to the ER when they drink that water, is it like eating bad mustard or bad chicken or bad fish? Like, can that mustard's fine? Drink that?
I mean, off the record, right? You have to notify the public when there's a scenario such as we lose pressure below 20 psi. We are legally obligated by state rule to issue a boil water. In reality, that water has already got chlorine. It's being mixed. Likely no. Now, if you have an NTU 9 and you're drinking that, that would look like chocolate milk. Probably not a good idea, but. You know, the normal things that you see, even in this city or others where a plant went down, we're going to issue a boil of water. That is because we went lower than 20 psi, and we have to.
Yeah.
And if there are steps, do not drink, do not use, which are dangerous and scary ones if issued, because then we have detected E. coli in the system, and you should not drink that water. But the normal ones you see.
Broken a lot of plastic containers full of water.
Any other questions? No?
Well, thank you all.
Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much. Appreciate it.
Yep.
Moving on to the next item, which is discussion and possible action on the utility appeal for 4828 Timberline Drive. Thank you. All right.
Should I tell the whole story? You want
State
the,
your-
the
state
quick
your
word?
name.
I had a
Please
three.
state your name and
Taylor
name.
Joe, 4828 Timberline
Yeah.
Time, Rollingwood, Texas. Proud member. June 2023, $3,000 water bill. Average had been hovering closer down 300, 400. Was out of town for 10 days. Did have a house sitter. No leaks identified. Searched the house. No leaks in the house. Sprinkler system got checked out that month. Was okay. Have had done 2 repairs since then to leaks that I found later on. But the next month it normalized without any repairs. Next door neighbor also had a abnormally high water bill that month. Theirs was over 2,000. So just kind of 2 neighbors. I know it's separate residencies, but we both spiked up, almost 10x of our average usage. And I've taken all the appropriate steps. Had the sprinkler system. I've spent over $1,000 on the sprinkler system, been getting checked out once with no fines and another one with a leak developed later. That's as exciting as it gets.
Yep. So we recall discussing this at the last meeting. The recommendation was to wait and get some additional meter information, which is included in the packet. So now we have not just the month after, but we have June through October. So the month in question plus the following 4 months of usage, which we wanted to then have an opportunity to review and then have a discussion about any further
Yep.
questions, as well as a discussion around any potential solutions. So while I have some thoughts, I do want to open it up to the rest of council. Might have some questions.
And the first 4, I had a couple months before that also that was significantly lower. I'm not sure if y'all had that.
We've got it all the way back to 2021.
Perfect.
Mr. Mr. Chairman, I note, I looked up our task here today, as stated by the council. We can make adjustments for errors in meter reading, I don't think we're there. Water meter inaccuracy, I don't know that we're there. Errors in calculation of the bill, we're not there. Excessive water use due to confirmed leaks in the customer's plumbing and other equipment, provided the customer provides reasonable evidence that the leak has been repaired. And those are the 4.
I would say I recall from our last discussion that there was quite a bit of input on, did you, while we're waiting for the 2 months post to get a bigger picture, that you should check your autofill and oh, that was you. Got it.
Yeah, no pool.
No pool.
Yeah. And I've got plumbing bills. You know, it's been checked and done, but I don't know if there's kind of 2 neighbors, extremely high stuff, house and construction behind us. I don't know if that has something to do with it. I have a lot of air in my pipes regularly. When I've talked to some plumbers, they said air can get in the pipes and run the meters up. They've dealt with that, but I haven't been in the pipes.
There's 2 service notations in here where they went out and said they saw that the meter was spinning, but technically nothing should have been running in the house.
Yeah.
Have you noticed any of that where you walk out, you know there's no one in the house, you know nothing's running, and you see the dial spinning?
So we saw that, I think, right after the bill.
Okay.
We did notice that, and that's self-resolved. Like, there was a spinning issue, actually, the day that Veronica came over with some of the gentlemen that work in the neighborhood. We had our landscape guys out there, and they checked everything, and they couldn't find anything. And so it was going through times where it was spinning uncontrollably with nothing running, but we never identified any water in the yard, any under the house, and then it stopped on its own. So it's like it repaired itself, but there was nothing for us to repair. We did take a sample to see if the meter was working, but that was a 5-gallon sample, which the N on that is pretty small compared to how many gallons it says we're using a month and the times that it randomly does kick on.
The historical usage does fluctuate. There's a general trend of low usage. There are a few spots where it increases dramatically, not just in June where it was significant.
Yeah.
September of 22, there was 80 gallons. Is there any of usage that particular month? Before it was 48 and after was 21. Was there any story around that you're...
No, I mean, we don't have a pool. And that's what honestly worries me a little bit is we get these spikes and we were told we have a leak. You know, it's happened, I think, even before your data, and we've gone back and looked at it, and we've never had a flood. We've never had flooded floors. We've never had a large collection of water in our yard. Neighbors hadn't complained about water pouring out of our yard. So my goal was to get the bill more reasonable, but I do have a concern that, well, every once in a while we have these huge spikes that we can't identify even after having investigated.
And then October, most recent bill is at 65,000 gallons, which is up from August up to September. And then
and so there was, in October, we did have a leaky line in the back that got repaired, and I have a receipt for that.
Yeah. The difficulty for me is that I can't equate the houses, although they're near each other, because they have 1 month in common as a spike, but then they have other months separately that are not the same month where they spike. So that makes it more difficult to say there was something that was impacting 2 houses next door to each other, because the spikes are inconsistent except for 1 month in question.
Yeah, and I don't know if they're definitely tied together. That month is just particularly
Yeah.
particularly
that was the part of-
coincidental. Other months in the past, we might have dealt with leaks in the past.
No, I just bring it up because you made that correlation today in your summary.
Yeah.
Which that's the correlation I'm struggling to make, other than 1
Well,
month,
could it be,
because
if air gets into the system, if that was the case, that it runs through 2 houses on the corner next to construction?
I mean, like, your house had a spike in August and September of 22, and theirs was October. You know, yours had.
Yeah, in August of 22, we also did put in a new lawn and sprinkler system at that time too.
And theirs had a spike in April. Yours did not. You both had one in June. Yours was still quite high in July.
Are these the highest spikes we've seen though? I mean, these seem
The June was,
June's
June
like
was the-
June's an outlier.
yeah, June is the one
Yeah.
that you had in common.
Yeah,
But the month before and the month after are
but
considerably
the
different on the two properties.
yeah.
So that's why I'm having a hard time. It is, indeed, the month of June is the same, but all other fluctuations are not lining up.
Yeah, but June is the largest jump for both of us, I believe.
That is absolutely correct.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
Just-
it's still concerning just looking at the levels because,
Yeah.
I mean, like, while June was the high, September of 22 was, you know, within spitting distance at 2/3 of it for such a large spike.
September of 22.
And
Yeah,
then-
and
and
that could have
last-
been new
last-
lawn going in.
Okay, and then last month was, you spoke to an issue then.
Yeah, then we
as
had
well.
had a leak that was was repaired, so we've seen that.
Yeah.
But yeah, June we didn't. We have repaired leaks since June, but it just wasn't identified until this last month. I went and checked the
Yeah.
meter and just saw it spinning and saw a little leak in the backyard. So we just didn't have $3,000 worth of water anywhere in our house or property.
Can the repair that you've done that caused the high October, can that be the source that equates to the June?
I mean, if that needs to be, yes. But the timing is different. But I mean, we are constantly having it looked at and checked on now that we've dealt with this.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you can have an issue and then it self resolves for a while and then it comes up again. And that was, now that I've become a semi-pro in water meters, I mean, that was a spin that was there regularly. It wasn't that one that I'd seen before that was like just where it's flying through gallons and nothing's running in the house. But even then, there was just nothing. There was no water source, nothing identified in the yard or house.
Oh, I know your feeling on this, Chris.
No, I don't have a feeling one way or another. I'm just reading the rule of what we can do.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, look, I guess we have the ability to, I think in some cases, the point is, can we make a recommendation and see if city council wants to support it, right? Because that's what it would be, anything that we're doing.
Oh, okay, that's fine.
Right, I mean.
But I mean, if we're going off the rules, I don't know that we're there. But if we want to do something else, cool.
Well, there is the proof of plumbing guys that have come out and checked it out and fixed things, and that was one of the rules.
I think that where that would take us is we probably need to wait to see if the October fix is documented, if that actually brings things back down. Because otherwise, like, if we still have a November that's elevated.
And October, I hadn't seen October's yet. October was a spike from September.
Correct.
Okay. Yeah.
So August was 30, September was 40, October is 65.
Yeah. And there was a leak in October. But we hadn't noticed that. We had checked that line and that hadn't been present before, so that's probably why it popped up.
Doesn't seem to be any thoughts on a motion. Well, and again, I mean, in my mind, the main point of these opportunities is to say, okay, well, one, the water came to the city and the water has to get paid for, right? We all understand that. The question is, should you get essentially penalized for high water usage with those rates that are in there in order to discourage people from having consistently high water usage? And then to adjust down, right, to allow, hey, the water gets paid for, but you're not getting the accelerators or the
Yeah, there's
of
some
your
multiplier
rates.
if you're
The
going over
multipliers
your-
of your
over your
rates,
right,
right? So the one fix that we do have, right, is moving to some amount that is covered by the wholesale plus 10%. And there's obviously, so we can talk about that. I think we could talk about looking at the following months. The question, I think that one of the concerns that we have is if November comes back and it's 95. Now we just adjusted the June number, there's something's going on with usage and it still hasn't necessarily, we have to figure out what's the next step, right? And we don't want to be, the point is to say, find a leak, fix the leak, and then usage goes back to normalized levels for your home, not for a home. But
Yeah.
so how do we know if it's normalized and is fixed? Obviously, we want to make sure that things get addressed.
I've had every line checked out that can be checked out. The fix was, even after June, there honestly wasn't a fix because there was nothing to fix, and it normalized on its own. So it does worry me. What if it pops up again? What if we're dealing with this again in a year? Something out of our control where we still can't identify any accumulation of water.
And Ashley, a motion that we come up with here would still go to council for approval, or we?
No, we're the
we do-
final hearing officer. No,
Okay,
we're
okay,
it.
Okay. Then I understand your concern, which is setting a precedent of making things up as we go along, which is kind of what I like to do. But yes.
Are we having separate hearings?
Yes.
or just-
Yes.
Yes, we
Yes.
want to
Yes.
address it separately, and
That's- okay, okay,
yeah, and
okay.
it'll apply,
Yeah.
obviously, but if there's any differences, there are differences, so.
So I didn't see anything in the packet about where you paid somebody to come out and fix the leak.
Yeah,
Um,
that was just this last month.
would it be an option to see what the November bill looks like and also to see what the documentation of the fix was, and then come back and readdress this one more time?
At the very least, we're required to have the documentation
Yeah.
of the fix.
Yeah, I've
Yeah.
got a receipt for that.
Yeah, that, we just need to have it.
So why don't we make a motion to say we will table this to allow the homeowner to provide the documentation.
In one more month?
And one more month of usage and the documentation of the repair, and then we will readdress the situation.
So do I send that to Veronica?
So
So that
Yep,
was,
I'll
that's mine.
second
Oh,
that motion.
Yep.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, all opposed? No one abstained? There we go. Thank you very much. Moving on to the next item, which is discussion and possible action on a utility appeal for 4830 Timberline Drive.
Thank you. It's great to see y'all again.
Hello.
Hello. I'm not a meter expert, but Aaron system, stealing water, faulty meters, these are all things that can and do happen. I'm not in a position to say that they did or didn't. I came here 2 months ago to specifically talk about June. At the time, it was our highest month by 3x, and it coincided with our next door neighbors, who was also significantly high. I did have a leak company come out. They said no leaks. I submitted that as evidence. I think it's Elizabeth.
Yes, sir.
You recommended turning off the autofill. I did that following the meeting. There's been no change to the pool level. My home usage is 348,000 gallons. I think that's what it is this year versus 141,000 last year. But I've had no change in landscape. There's no new people living at my house. My girl's got a year older, but I've got to address something because I've taken my watering down to almost nothing, and that's a separate issue. June is why I came here, and I think June is what we're looking to. Ideally, it would be the wholesale plus 10%, so we can pay the city, because we've been sitting on 50% of that bill for however long, 5 months. Like Taylor said, there was no standing water. We didn't have any leaks. It is coincidence, suspect, that we had that in the same month. That would be 5 gallons a minute between the two houses, 5 gallons a minute, every minute for an entire month that usage represents. And I'm a family of 4 people and a dog. We do not have any turf in the backyard, so we just water the front yard.
I feel like just looking at this, you have to have a leak somewhere. Because pretty consistently, with the exception of like 2 months, 3 months max, in the last 12 months,
Higher.
significantly higher.
And it coincides with I don't know what it means, it was a manual read, and then about the time the increases started, it went to a remote read. I don't know if that means anything, but like I said, we had American Leak Detection come out, they said no leaks, and I submitted that. Obviously, a leak would be better for me, because then I could get, everything reduced, so,
That's what I'm saying, you've gotta have one.
but luckily, y'all have the latitude to make a decision outside of that.
Cause you went up, quite high again in August, and then trended up again in October. So I'm
Yeah.
desperately trying to find that for you,
Yeah.
because it doesn't make sense otherwise.
But still significantly away from the 92,000 or 920,000, I don't know how many gallons that was, it says we used in June.
Certainly, but, the October of last year, the April, the July, the August, and now the October, which is 6 months of that time, are all
They're all higher.
300% of what your average was last year. And that's not-
141,000 versus
that's not
348, so
counting-
it's 200 and 250%, but yeah.
It's not counting June. I took that out. I'm just looking at the chart here,
Yeah,
and I might be off by, a couple of percent this way or that way, because I did the rounding in my head, but it is like there are 4 different spikes, June being the outlier, but there are still 3 others. So,
Mhm.
I'm trying to find a leak for you.
totally. Do y'all have anybody at the city that can come look?
We discussed this last time, but what are the options around replacing meters or checking meters, just to eliminate
Well, and we hadn't, this,
the concerns there?
one that I don't think is, neither of these meters have been, none of the meters have been tested, right? Or-
We did a 5-gallon.
Right,
Test.
The 5 gallon.
Right, we poured
not the
5
test test.
Right, I said typically we find out that when a meter is not working, it's because it's not spinning at all, as opposed to overspinning.
Mhm.
The accuracy usually works in the wrong direction there.
It depends who you're talking to.
Right,
with the
fair
trader, I
enough.
guess, but that's-
Send those off for testing if that's something the commission would like to see. We generally request that, have the homeowner sign something that if they do come back working, that they would bear the cost of that test. But I think in this case, we'd be happy to send them both for testing, just to clear up any,
And what is the cost like?
it's like $100.
Yeah, I was gonna tell me a couple $100 bucks.
Go and pick them up and drop them off and, replacing and all of that. So a little bit more on staff time, but I think in this case, we'd be happy to do that.
Well, another option is to replace the meter for the next
Do we
few
have
months.
Meters
Do
available?
we have any?
Well, I guess it's both. We have to
Right,
know
we
that the
we
one.
normally put in a
It's worth it.
stand-in meter while we send it off, so that one is doing, the calculation in the meantime, I'm sure we can.
Right, we can do that too, if there's gonna be any argumentation as to who pays for the meter testing. Could we not swap out those 2 meters for 2 months and see if anything changes?
I'm sure we can.
Cause that would take away, your concerns.
Do we see just his being higher than the neighborhood average, like consistently this last year, or does mine tend to run significantly higher than the neighborhood average?
I wasn't looking at the neighborhood average, I was looking at your individual
Historical
averages.
averages for each.
Your
Yeah.
historical averages, cause we
Right.
can see your water from the last
Yeah,
couple of
does mine
years.
look like it's back down
Bless you.
both sides October?
Yours went up in October, but when,
But other than that, it's.
right, but your spikes are not the same, except for June,
Oh, yeah, than his.
yes.
Yeah,
But your
like
October
you
went
were
up with
saying,
your
mine
leak.
is like 250% higher this year. I'm just wondering if.
Oh,
I've been told years ago that we had high water usage, and we looked into it, and we never could figure anything out. And my yard looks like crap, so.
no, years ago,
You and me
yours was,
both.
yours was very,
At the end of 22 is elevated, but not like this, not like 23.
no,
Yeah.
it wasn't, you didn't have anything, major craziness from
Yeah.
May 21 to until towards the end of '22 with an individual month that spiked.
Yeah, and it's all in the public agenda. if
So
you
for
wanna look it
basically
up.
2 years, you were fine.
Well, I would support trying to swap out the meters, so at least we can eliminate that cause
Yeah.
and concern.
I mean,
Will
we
that
may
tell
al-
us if the old meters are broken is the problem? And you're right, when they
Yeah.
break, they tend not to spin at all.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, I don't know that we have to do it on, on, 4828, because
Yeah.
aside from June, the rest was pretty normal, and then there was October, but you identified a leak. So I'm not as curious about your meter.
Yeah, when Veronica and team came out and they did the test, the meter was not moving, and the meter, whenever I've checked it, it's static.
Right.
Again, just back to, I don't know the cause. Usage might be up from, it might be a leak, might be watering. But that month, we didn't use that water, and the meter wasn't spinning. So, again, second time here, a lot of correspondence. For that month, I'm just requesting that we pay wholesale plus 10% on that amount. That'd be my ask. And then I think I've got a secondary issue that it's either I gotta get another leak company to tell me that I do or don't have a leak, or it's a faulty meter, but I'm viewing those as two separate things, because they came out after June and there was no issue, or the meter wasn't running and it was accurate with what was taken out of the system.
Just,
But if that was the
Just-
case, then after June, it would have gone down dramatically more. It did go down in July, but it still went down to twice the level of your previous history. And then it spiked up again from there in August. So that's why I'm saying
But June was, how much, what was the June number? 92,000?
92.
And then what's the next highest number in the last
52
2
in
years?
August.
So,
52 this
But
August.
You went up 10x, and then now you're down half, so you're still up 5x.
yeah. But it's still, I mean, it's almost twice as much as the highest that we've ever used. And
It is, but I mean, you can see
Right,
like
but
the
all
area under the
before that,
curve.
you were between, 8 and 12 for like, and then you have, March 16, April 37, May 22, June 92, July 32, and August 52, which is all dramatically above your 8 to sort of 15 range that
Okay.
you were living in for 2 years before that.
7. I've been there for 7, but.
No, I've got this 2 years report.
Oh, yeah, you got the 2-year.
I can't see past that.
Um,
So that's why I'm saying, like,
so-
everything points to you have a leak somewhere.
So am I to, instead of a concession on June, my task is really to go find a leak and then come and contest all of 2023, all of my water for 2023. That's kind of what I'm hearing.
Well, it's April.
we actually
It's when
can't
you
look
went
back more than 3 months.
I thought it was-
Well,
I mean, that's,
Yeah.
this is what
Yeah.
we're
but we're already,
tasked with.
we're in November talking about June, so.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
no, yeah.
But I mean, you filed something, so that stops the clock.
Okay.
What my experience doing this for a bit is, it's toilets. It's just toilets, and because then you don't see it, it goes right to the sewer, and that's what happened to me.
But you would hear,
Toilet running.
but you would hear them,
Yeah.
You would hear it.
but the
Not
meter
always.
would be spinning.
One time I had one zone and the sprinkler going off, and I went and just randomly checked the meter, and it was just going like crazy. There was one small zone, probably like a 75 square foot area yard with 6 sprinkler heads, and they're all blowing full blast. It's like, where's that water going? Because just it's.
It goes down. You don't see it because it goes
Yeah,
to
it
the
goes
water
down.
table.
If it was going like that, you'd be losing pressure, and it wouldn't be coming out of your sprinkler.
When you have a leak, like, for example, if you had a leak in an irrigation system, it wouldn't be a puddle in your yard, it goes down.
Yeah, yeah. We fixed all that. Those are some of the ways we fixed.
No, I'm with you. This is, if I got this bill, I'd be like, what the heck? But we can only do what the council tells us we can do.
Well, are you, I don't think there's a path on June at this point, given concern around the surrounding periods. Are you interested in replacing the meter and seeing if that helps? It helps eliminate causes. Otherwise, the water is going somewhere.
Like I said, I've been in front of the council twice. I've had the city out. I didn't use that water in June. There are explanations that could have not potentially involved me. It's coincidence that when my bill was $2,000, my neighbor's bill was $3,000. Nothing materially changed, and so again, that's the request. That for that month we pay wholesale plus 10%, at least at 4830 Timberline. And if we need to come back again in 2 months for another reason, I'm happy to do so.
It has to meet the requirements of what we're tasked with.
But that's not what I
It
heard.
has to meet the requirements of what we're tasked with. It just has to, or we can't do it.
I mean, what he was saying is like we can make a recommendation to city council, but I think,
We're the final hearing officer, unfortunately. That's it.
okay.
In the discussion 2 months ago, was, the council had the discretion to make a ruling or an exception.
Does the city have any other recommendations? I know through my personal experience, when I went through a big leak, 3 or 4 years ago, I think it was American Water I had out first, and they told me I didn't have a leak.
Okay.
I went through 3 leak detection people, and the third one found the big leak, and it was documented, and I did it. I actually had someone from the city out, like, working with that person and watching the meter and when they were doing the things. But it shouldn't have to be. It might be nice as a notation to say if we can have some recommendations with consistent, trusted leak detectors that we like to work with, so that it doesn't have to be a hit or miss, throw a dart at a board for people to just bring someone out who may or may not be the greatest resource.
Yeah, unfortunately, we aren't allowed to give recommendations for contractors, because we would be then, favoring certain businesses over others. We're just not allowed to be in that business.
That makes sense.
We're happy to always have, we have Public Works Department, if they can ever, be there when someone is taking a look at something, they're always happy to help troubleshoot, at least from the city side, the meter and everything on the city side, so we're happy to do that. We're happy to send these meters for testing. I think there might have been a few times in the past when the utility commission did rule on some unexplained water loss, so maybe things that weren't necessarily in those 4, those strict requirements.
Since they've been put into place? I don't think so. In the old days, it was all sort of loosey, and that's why it was.
Maybe it was before, that might be what I'm remembering, but,
So, okay, so I don't know if there's support for a change to the bill today. What I want to consider, what I'd like to do is have a subcommittee to discuss the options for when we see a spike, something to address an unknown.
That would be wonderful if we could get some authority to deal with that. That would be great.
So this doesn't provide you an immediate, nor any of you necessarily, an immediate solution, but it does provide a path towards a solution, which is to say, we will subcommittee discussion to come up with circumstances or optionality, and a path forward when it doesn't meet the 4 that are in policy or the guidance today, where we clearly see a spike in usage. There is a reduction following, which would explain the spike. We don't necessarily have a documented leak, but it seems unlikely that was part of normal water usage. But I think, to Chris's point, we would be, if we keep addressing each issue that comes up separately, that we don't have a context and for making future decisions. Right? There's no precedent. We're just making things up each time, and then we lack consistency. And so,
Totally makes
what I'd
sense.
like to do is make a motion to subcommittee a discussion around addressing unusual water usage, for lack of a better term, and come up with some ideas of how we can address those things, which then may in turn be applied to these particular issues and appeals. That's very. what's that?
Clarification. Asking council if we can have like a 5, and 5 is extraordinary,
I think that's right.
something or other.
Something to that,
That's
yeah.
what I'm hearing.
If that's, part of the discussion might determine if that's. the
Yeah,
path.
council may say no. I mean, they may say yes, they may say no.
That's right.
We may also find out during that discussion that there's some interpretation that allows us to do it, in which case we can come back
That'd
and
be great
say,
too.
we saw 1, 2, 3, 4, but this says we can actually do. I just wanna make sure that again, that we set proper precedent, so,
I also am not sure we're posted for that today necessarily, but I think this could be something that could go on the December meeting.
Okay.
Maybe we could work in advance with a subcommittee, get some ideas, put it on y'all's December utility commission meeting, and it can go to council by December.
Okay.
I'm just not sure we can, informally, do that, but I don't think we can ask council to do something that's not posted on the agenda.
I think that's right, too.
From this meeting.
well, that's just a matter of, unfortunately, that's a matter of timing, right?
Sure.
But either way,
So we can take the follow-up and try to put something on the
right,
next agenda, okay.
because it'd have to come back to we'd have to vote on it at our next meeting to get it on, right?
Right, that, or I suppose your city council liaison could put it on the immediate city council agenda, it just would not come with a.
I noticed your silence during all of this.
Sitting in the corner.
Supposed to be here for observing.
I know.
Liaison.
Liaison, that's right.
Right. So for my purposes, what I'm hearing is pending a ruling or an outcome, nothing's going to be done on that particular month. I need to get as many leak detection companies as I can to find a leak, fix it, produce a couple months of reduced usage, and then come back and contest April to November.
No.
They don't want to see me again?
The proof of the leak being fixed, we wouldn't need to see the following month's usage to it. No, what were you gonna come up with?
No, I mean, you have to file within 3 months, right? And you only get 3 months back.
Well, this is
Which
still,
you did, right?
Yeah, but I
Yeah,
mean,
but-
if you
but
get
we're
it
still
fixed
talk-
now,
Yeah, but we did the delay for an extra couple
Oh,
of
yeah.
months, so.
I'm fine with that. I'm
that-
fine with
that
tolling the
gives-
statute.
That gives you the
But I mean,
space.
fixing a leak today doesn't explain June.
it,
Well,
Because
I
the
vote-
data since June is low.
But the data
Well-
since June isn't low, that's the point.
That, exactly.
Yeah, June is not low.
So
That's right.
fixing today
right.
It's-
explains,
It's still elevated.
it's still elevated, it's
yeah,
not
it's
elevated
not.
to the same extent. This, I promise you, this is helping you.
Yeah.
It's not elevated to the same extent,
No,
but
no,
it is
we
still
want to
elevated.
help you.
Yeah.
I mean, I just don't have the power
So
to
fixing
do
it
it.
today does explain, at the minimum, the elevation that's happened since June, which is still elevated. And then we can argue whether it applies to also June as well.
Not just sending some leak repairs.
yeah, and we still have to have a
So
discussion.
you're coming
Yes,
back here.
Right.
You're, I know I had that motion out there. Does that need to be repeated?
Yeah, could you restate that, please?
Or can we do that? I thought that was the comment that we can't because it wasn't on the agenda.
No,
No, we can ask for it to be.
council can't vote on something we come up with unless we've already approved it and had time to put it
Oh,
on their
got it.
agenda.
So they can't do it on the subcommittee
Yeah.
meeting. Okay, got it.
Right.
Potentially.
But we can come
They
up
can't do
with
it in the November meeting.
Okay.
But I think y'all can form a subcommittee.
We can get it done by the
Okay,
December
okay, great.
meeting for city council. So,
Does that require a motion?
does the subcommittee require a motion?
It can,
Okay.
doesn't have to.
You want to?
Motion to subcommittee the discussion on potential solutions or addressing, water usage that doesn't, meet
Meet the 4 criteria.
existing criteria.
Second. Or, all in favor.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? All abstained? Okay. Thank you for your
When
patience.
when does the utility commission meet again?
2025.
You're mean.
Every month
You're a
around
It's
this
every,
time.
it's every month, so it should be the
Okay.
first week of December.
I mean, unless you find a leak, what you want
Yeah.
is for the city council conversation to occur. Because like that'll give us potentially the authority, but that's months out.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, good, I'm gonna get somebody else.
It's in your favor to
Yeah.
get them
But
to give
that-
us authority to do something.
And I know, I mean, that bill is hanging out, but, right, I mean, it doesn't,
Yeah, we paid half of it.
well, thank you for doing that, and
Yep.
and there's obviously no concern with that continuing to stay unpaid
Okay.
for all of you, as that's the rules, so.
We'll reach out to both, y'all this week, we'll just get those meters tested and swapped out, just to be noticed.
Thank you.
That sounds
Thanks,
great.
guys.
You need our help?
Dude, she needs all the help in the world.
Yeah.
I don't know if you wanna
Better
hear,
about your
yeah, I was gonna say, I don't know if you
Yeah,
wanna
yeah.
hear this story.
Yeah, you
You'll
know,
feel so much better about yourself.
I
Yeah,
promise
yeah.
you, you'll feel literally mathematically about 16 times better.
Moving on to the next item, discussion and possible action on utility appeal for 4824 Rollingwood Drive.
So I have the timeline that you asked for and
Oh, thank you.
a little bit of documentation and then.
I have it here.
But
It's
I,
on.
I have new information.
Oh.
New
Which
informa-
is the,
oh.
my usage history all the way back to 2020.
Is that-
Oh, you got that, okay.
Yes.
That's
So
helpful.
Those are the last 3 pages.
Thank you.
I think a lot of those were directed.
There we go.
Yes.
Oh,
Yes.
okay.
I don't have a 7th copy though.
Okay, we'll grab them before. we'll
Okay.
save it.
No, no, I'll give you mine. It's cool.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll let you look at that. So the very last page, so the history I was able to get from the city only went back to 2021 because they said they had a system change and they didn't have any prior records. So what I did is I printed out my check register, which shows our 2020 payments, which all felt very reasonable. So that's the very, very last page is our personal check register. Some of them, there were 2 or 3 payments made at once because of EFT issues, or we were in the process of negotiating we were hoping to do an appeal. So the check register, the last couple of years is lumpy, but January 2020 through December 2020, I think those are monthly.
So we have, there's, okay, let's start with the irrigation timeline.
Okay.
So,
Yes.
so the statement here has invoices of work starting in June of 2021 being completed in May of 2022. That was the last payment. Is that,
Yeah, then there, we also had a drip line leak in June of 2022. And we had our rainwater collection tanks reconfigured in August of 2022. And that's all on that first page of the stapled packet, the
Okay.
timeline.
and then when I was looking at the water history, you see this elevated usage, in 21. And then in March of 22, it dips, and then it goes back up in June of 22, and then it dips in July, and then goes back up. Do you know what happened in both March of 22 and July of 22 that would have resulted in a reduction in the water usage at that time?
So in April of 2022, they identified a leak, which they called, was at the relief valve of the drip line, and that was repaired.
Okay.
And May of 2022, our water softener was leaking, and we ended up having that removed because they couldn't fix it. And then in June of 2022, they had another drip line leak that they fixed.
Okay. And softener. Okay, so those are all repairs that would then lead to a reduction in July. And then my question, was it the pool issue that started then? And then, because in July it goes back up for August, back up for September, and then you have the real reduction. So and then it's starting to go back up again. So I guess I'm just trying to understand these points in time, what were some of the
Yeah,
activities?
it's really hard to pinpoint because we know that our pool has been leaking with
Okay.
the cracks.
And the pool identified, I know there were issues with the contractor, I know that some of
Uh-huh.
that might have been settled, but the work on the pool is in what state of completion, repair?
Nothing has
et
been done on the pool yet. We are still negotiating with the city on our permit to redo the pool.
That for me is probably like the big question. Is there a reason why it's been many months that a permit's being held up?
We'll check on the status. Unfortunately, our development manager is not here right now, but we could look at the status live.
Because until they can get it permitted to protect the foundation of the house, they can't repair the pool leak.
Right, well, I'm trying to figure out, the pool is leaking, and then somehow in December,
It went to nothing.
you got usage to almost nothing, which I'm wondering if that's a meter reading or not. I don't know how you would get,
Well, it's down December,
and then it's
February,
down
March,
January,
April, May.
really, really low, and then it starts this, obviously, summer usage, we see kind of spiking, which is consistent with historical, I mean, I guess that we don't have past 21, but certainly,
So the last page we do show prior to 21.
Do you know what happened in October, November of 22?
I don't know.
Okay. the cost of
I don't know
so
if
much.
there are 120 cracks probably on our pool, and if any of them are shifting and one, I don't know what's happening underground.
That was what I was wondering in terms of like warm weather, cold weather,
Mhm.
expansion of cracks,
Yeah.
contraction of
Mm.
cracks.
yeah.
That makes sense, yeah.
Cause that picture is something.
Once again, I kind of go back to the rule, and it says, provided the customer provides reasonable evidence leak has been repaired, past tense.
Yeah, so what,
So we have that on several individual issues.
just
They're
not,
just not allowed to repair the biggest issue right now because it requires permitting from the city.
But that's not in this rule right here, and that's all we can do.
well, the challenge, yeah, I think,
There has to be something with the customer not being allowed to repair.
Well, there is a word exceptional circumstances somewhere.
There is, yeah, it does say, adjustments of bills, for periods exceeding 3 months will not be considered except in extraordinary circumstances, as determined at the sole discretion of the city.
That's not us.
Well,
That may be just,
that's
and
also-
that may be the period, not the reasons, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, repeat.
We can go beyond 3 months in exceptional circumstances, but the reasons for which we make the adjustment are still limited to like before.
Well, we have a-
Exceptional circumstances is applied to the dates.
Yeah.
Well, so we're saying there's some historical leaks, and we understand certain things have been repaired and documented as been repaired. What we can't necessarily determine is to what impact the pool leak is having on all of this historical
Mhm.
data, other than the fact that amazingly between December and April of 2022, they got their usage well under historical levels.
Yeah.
Which I think was, I'm sorry, the last repair was June of repair work was June of 22, not pool
Right.
related?
Yeah, so on June of 22, they repaired a drip line leak, and then in August, they did a reconfiguration of the rainwater collection tanks.
Okay, and so then we had still fairly high usage September, October. Maybe that was warm, and then it drops. So is there a correlation between reconfiguring the retention tanks to not fill with city water, which is obviously not helpful, but helpful moving forward. And the drip lines are now repaired. The question that you're bringing up, Chris, is do we have it we have circumstances that would allow us to look at historical months, but if the pool isn't repaired, do we say we still have repair of all these things? Is how you're getting at it. So My initial,
I have a question.
yeah, please.
I mean, this is brainstorming territory because, who can figure this out? So, in here, in this timeline, it said, back in January, February 2020, the cracks were cosmetic. And then as time goes on, by March 2022, the cracks have now become extreme. And if I look at we can see back, to May 21 on this chart that we have here, but if we look at the 2020 numbers that look like they were paid monthly, then, which is all we have to go on because the city can't find the records for 2020. Is
Right.
that correct?
Well, that's what I was told.
2020, it was a previous billing system. We can pull that information.
Well, that would be helpful,
Yeah.
but
Okay.
to corroborate this.
Sure.
But based on this, you can see a somewhat consistent average all the way until the cracks went crazy in March 2022, which is when you have those first big spikes. So it appears as though
Well, November,
we had the pool leak for a very long time, but the pool leak got
progressively
dramatically
worse starting in July of 21. I mean, well,
Yes.
July of 21 is still consistent for a summer, and then we have November at 975. February is 1130. It's possible if there isn't a month, if that's 2 months payment, if that was if you're paying,
Once on the checking account registered, it gets lumpy.
okay,
Because
so
our
it's-
EFT didn't go through a couple months, so we paid it.
so that might be a 2-month
Mhm.
payment for both of the,
Mhm.
okay, so then to your point, Elizabeth, it really is March.
Yeah, and so that tells me, at least one of the questions we had last time, to my recollection, is, well, we don't know how to do an average because we didn't have the data. But now we can get the data. We have some,
When you say an average, are you asking like a baseline?
yes.
So could 2020 be our baseline?
Well, that's what I'm getting towards because it looks like that's the natural before the cracks went really, really big. And I know you have all these other leak issues too. But I'm trying to isolate the pool issue for the moment because that's the issue that we still have.
No,
we still
it's-
can't fix.
It's down. Even the pool's cracked between December and May, and water's usage is way down.
Well, it could be, the pool crack could be subject to expansion of clay.
You know better than I.
Well, that, depending on the amount of water and clay, it can expand and contract. If there's a crack, it could be open and closed. That's possible.
I'm not to the point where I'm recommending an action. What I'm trying to do is, while we're trying to figure out if and when this will get permitted, if and when this will be, I'm just trying to get the fuller picture, because last time we met a couple of months ago, we didn't have that previous information.
Yep.
And now we do, which is quite different than what we had before. And
Yeah, obviously, I think it's challenging in one sense. It's helpful to know that all the work, which would include the pool, has been completed, and then I don't need to see any future usage, but at least we know that there's no more leaks, and then we're addressing
that's the nut.
a completed problem. Several of the issues have been addressed. There's still one that's outstanding, but we don't know the background. So, yes.
I can speak to the pool permitting.
Okay.
What I can see in the system is the last thing that happened, and Nick, you may have more knowledge of this, and maybe you too, but the last thing that happened was it went to our engineers for zoning and drainage review. It came back with comments, and they have to complete certain things to clear those comments and send it back to the engineers, and as far as I can see in the system, that has not happened.
So
So
we
we're
are
waiting
trying to
on
address
them.
all of it. Yeah, and our engineer didn't understand a lot of the comments.
Okay,
So we're
so that happened.
working on it, yeah.
The letter was dated May 30th, and it was entered into our system by Nikki on June, so you may have been notified like June 8th, which is what it says in there, but the letter was dated May 30th, and so we're just waiting on them to get back.
it's a
And at this
process.
point, it does go back and forth between the engineers and our engineers, their engineers, with different plans. But
And
those
so-
comments have not yet been cleared.
Okay, so theoretically, your engineers have to address some questions that came back from the city.
Yes.
To the extent that either plans are changed or those questions are answered, is there another step following that that would have to happen before the permit would be issued? Or is that the last step, or is that step 3 of 7?
Engineers is usually the first step. The zoning is one part of that.
That hasn't
Whether it
happened.
matches everything in the code, that you still have some comments to clear there.
Mhm.
The engineering is another part.
Okay,
Still have comments to clear there. Once that's all done, then it goes to another set of engineers that checks it for like international building code. Make sure everything is all for safety, health, all that.
okay. So
Then
there's
after
still
that,
several
You're
steps.
good to go unless there's a fire inspection on the pool, but I don't.
So help us understand
Thank
this.
you.
But there may be on like the chemicals, you know, that.
Absolutely.
that's all set up,
If
so.
the response was back to the city, let's just hypothetically say tomorrow,
Mhm.
then,
The next engineers usually take 1 to 2 weeks.
So
Max.
issue more comments or clear all the comments.
Okay.
Requests.
and then if that's all clear, then there's one more engineer, which is,
No, there's no more engineers.
That's it.
after that.
Okay.
Mhm.
It's just building.
okay.
That's usually pretty quick.
Then you just have, like your inspections are laid out, you pay for your inspections and.
So if everything were
Go.
perfect, it would be like a month from now. But,
If they had their answers in and they were
Yes.
all cleared.
yes, but
So
if
year
it's
end.
not, then it could be 3 months or whatever.
However long it takes them to get it back, we can't say, and then whether those get cleared or not depends on the drainage and zoning reviews again.
Got it?
So what
It
I'd like
does.
to
Thank
do
you very much.
is continue to come up with ways to make a clear path forward for you and for the commission here, which is, we already have a discussion that will be happening on some certain extraordinary circumstances. I think that discussion should include a way to address this post, well, in my mind, it would be post confirmation that the pool is fixed. Because we can, and not worry, we're already talking about this, we understand timing is a thing. Let's address some of these issues in that discussion and come up with a way to have some flexibility around certain
Mhm.
extraordinary situations.
That we never anticipated ever before.
But-
You mean address
But
those
having
sooner?
said that, it makes it
Mhm.
more difficult for us if it's multiple months that the engineers from your side haven't come back to the city.
So, yeah, the city's engineer quit, and then, so we'd already had rounds of conversations with them, and so now we have a new city engineer that we're working with. But we are hopefully within weeks of coming back with our response. So,
I'd
Yeah,
also
I'm
like-
ju- I'm just saying the
Yeah.
faster that can happen,
okay,
Yep.
like, it would be better for all the different moving parts involved
Yeah.
from not just your permitting speed, but
So,
trying
and
to work
actually,
through
I mean,
this,
it's-
'cause it makes
it's
it hard
when-
for us if
and it's when
there's-
demo happens of the current pool, it's not, when the new pool is fully functional, I guess those are different.
That's true, if the
points
pool is
to-
empty and it's demoed, then at least we know that the pool leak is not happening
Mhm.
any
Right.
longer, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it just makes it harder to argue that if the city waits for months
Mm-hmm,
and can't process the permit because the leak still goes on,
mm-hmm.
but it's tough to make an argumentation if that's delayed because your engineers haven't come back.
The only other
Okay.
item that I'll apologize.
I was gonna ask for a quick clarification, so I noticed in the letter, it's, you stated that, you were keeping water in the pool so the crack doesn't get any worse. If the intention is to completely, demo and get a new pool, I'm wondering why that decision was made, or why it's still full and that.
Because the pool is, attached, they said that if we emptied the pool, then the house foundation would be at risk.
Do you have could you ever add a letter from the engineer stating that?
Yeah, it seems like the
Yeah.
weight would make it worse.
So a letter
I
from
don't
the
know.
engineer
I'm not an
that they
engineer.
recommend
I'm not
not
gonna
emptying
comment
the
on
pool.
that.
Yeah, yeah.
I can do that.
The only other item I'll mention is that for as many months as this is, and we see the amounts, the account is current
Yeah.
on all payments, so we appreciate that, and I'd like to
Oh, wonderful, thank you.
find, I don't know if I need to make a motion other than to say this will be discussed as part of the other subcommittee discussion, which will hopefully provide us a path forward to address some unique circumstances like this in the future, and come up with a solution that provides you some relief going forward.
Mhm.
Ashley, you okay with that and not having to specifically?
Sure, yeah, we don't have to make
Okay.
any motion for that.
Thank you very much. Unless you have any other questions for us, or
Okay.
anyone else has any other questions.
So, no, nothing else from me until we, have pool demolished.
No, the letter from the engineer saying you can't empty the pool.
That-
Okay.
That
And-
can wait though, right, because there's nothing actionable until.
Well, I mean,
I think it would help.
I think it would.
It would help us.
Just
Okay.
Yeah.
it's something
Okay.
to include. It's on your list.
Right?
Okay,
Of
And then-
things. I
and
don't
then-
know. We don't need it tomorrow, obviously, but when
Uh.
it's part of a future submission, it would be helpful to have that in the information.
Then if, and between you and our city resources, if we can, prioritize expediting this process to the best of our ability on both sides.
yes, yes.
Yeah. And
Okay.
Okay, all right,
Thank
well,
you.
thank you.
Thanks.
The final item is a discussion of intent to continue to serve on the utility commission.
Yes, let me pull up who is, so we do this every year, currently we should have 4 members who are up for, or whose term ends. We have Clark Wilson, Jonathan Miller, Elizabeth Bray, and Chris Meekin. If y'all would like to continue serving, we'll just take a verbal, yes, I'd like to stay on, and then we will pass those names on to city council and they will make a blanket, approval or, appointment to all of our boards and commissions.
Question,
Yes.
are there other people willing?
I was just
Cause
gonna
that,
say- I was just
that's,
gonna ask the same
I'm,
thing.
I'm,
Or that
I'm
are
happy to
interested.
cycle off if there's other people that wanna add fresh thoughts.
I do think we have some applications in the queue. Let me just confirm that they're for the utility commission.
So you're a conditional.
No, I'll do whatever. I'll do whatever. I just don't wanna hog the space that somebody else.
That's fair.
While we're looking at that, who is on our subcommittee? Have y'all decided who's gonna be on the subcommittee to look at these? We can go ahead and start working with them if someone here already wants to volunteer.
Can we have a subcommittee on that?
Of course, of course. A meeting to set a meeting.
Is anyone particularly interested in being part of that discussion?
I'll do it.
We have
If
one.
you do it.
I'll participate.
All right, we can have one more. Anybody? It's gonna be fun.
I'm cycling back to see if I'm still in a subcommittee for, cell phone stuff. And
Okay.
That was gonna be my next question in our next agenda.
Yeah, for sure.
I'll do
We
it.
were last going to we were waiting until the summer was up, and I guess now we can just send it at any point. We had this other survey that just went out, so it kind of gets to how many
Oh, the
surveys do we want to
residential,
send out?
task-
But
yeah.
probably maybe after the holidays. It's I feel like every time we wait, there's another reason. Like, oh, now it's the holidays, probably don't want to send it. But
Yeah, could we do that in like early December? or something?
yeah, absolutely,
Something like that.
for sure.
Yeah.
We'll put it on y'all's next agenda, and we'll have it all ready to hit go, and just make sure y'all are good with it before we send it off. But sorry.
Exciting.
Did we have any utility?
We have one person who has applied, but they've also applied for 2 other boards and commissions.
Mm.
Are there spots available on other boards?
Not at the moment, I have one alternate position that I'm.
I shall throw myself on the mercy of council.
All right, I like it. Spray.
Yeah, I would like to stay. I wanna do water quality and cell phone.
Yeah, that's helpful.
Chair.
Yes.
All right.
Yeah, you're gonna stay the chair.
So
Mr. Wilson.
I've been on here a long
I'm not
time,
upset.
so.
You have been, but council will, be considering those term extensions if you're still interested in serving.
I'm still willing.
Okay. All right, sounds great. Everyone else, you're stuck for another year at least.
And we had both Chris's and myself as the
Yeah,
subcommittee.
I'll do them.
Okay, great. Sounds good.
And I
Thank
think
you.
with
Thank you.
that, we can adjourn.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
All